My girlfriend said, "Stop making excuses. Every man in my family obeys. And if you really loved me, you would wear the ring no matter how much it hurts." And so I discovered her family's twisted tradition. What happened next destroyed a 4-year relationship and exposed something way darker than I ever imagined. Listen, I am still shaking as I type this. I do not even know where to start, but I need to get this out because what just happened has completely turned my world upside down. I am Tyler, 28 years old, and I thought I knew the woman I was going to marry. Her name is Madison. We have been together for 4 years, and 2 months ago she proposed with her family's precious heirloom ring, the current ring in the Carson tradition that gets passed to each new generation's most recent member. Sounds romantic, right? Wrong. So incredibly wrong. Here is the thing nobody talks about. I have sensory processing issues. Always have. Certain textures, tight clothing, jewelry, they do not just feel uncomfortable to me, they feel like torture. I cannot wear watches, cannot handle wool, and rings. Forget about it. The sensation makes my skin crawl, and my brain basically short-circuits. When Madison first slipped that ring on my finger during the proposal, I tried so hard to just push through it, but within minutes, I was sweating, fidgeting, could not think straight. It felt like the metal was cutting off my circulation even though it fit perfectly. My nervous system was just screaming, "Get it off, get it off, get it off." I explained this to her as gently as I could. I suggested alternatives, wearing it on a chain, carrying it in a special box, even getting a tattoo replica, anything to show my commitment without the physical torture. That is when she said those words that are burned into my brain. "If you really loved me, you would wear the ring no matter how much it hurts." I stared at her. "Madison, this is not about love. This is about my brain being wired differently." She cut me off. "Stop making excuses. Tyler, every man in my family obeys. They has worn that ring. My grandfather, my father, my uncle, they all managed just fine." I tried again, "But they do not have sensory," she interrupted. "Sensory? What? Tyler, you are not disabled. You are just being dramatic." That should have been my first red flag. But I loved her, so I kept trying to make her understand. The arguments got worse over the next few weeks. She would test me by suddenly putting the ring on my finger when I was not expecting it. Then time how long I could keep it on, like some kind of sick experiment. "You lasted 3 minutes longer today," she would say, as if my discomfort was some kind of game. Her family started getting involved too. Her mother would make pointed comments about how unusual it was that I did not wear my engagement ring. Her sister would ask if I was having second thoughts, since there was no visible proof of our engagement. But what happened at the family dinner last week? God, I should have seen this coming. They ambushed me. Madison's whole family was there, and her father stood up during dessert. "Tyler, son, we need to talk about this ring situation. 4 generations of Carson's sons-in-law have worn that ring with pride. What seems to be the problem?" I tried to quietly explain about sensory processing, but Madison cut me off. "He is being dramatic, Dad. He just needs to tough it out." Then her uncle chimed in. "Back in my day, men did not have sensitivities. You just wore what you were supposed to wear." That is when things got really weird. Madison's grandmother, this tiny 80-year-old woman, looked at me with these cold eyes and said, "That ring has a very special purpose in our family, Tyler. It is not just jewelry. It is a symbol of compliance." "Compliance? What the hell did that mean?" I asked, and the whole table got uncomfortably quiet. Madison grabbed my hand under the table and squeezed so hard it hurt. "Grandma Rose just means tradition. Honey, family tradition." But the way she said it, and the look that passed between the family members, something was definitely off. I managed to get through the rest of dinner, but I could not shake the feeling that there was something I was not being told about this ring and what it represents to Madison's family. Am I overthinking this? Or is there something darker going on here? That compliance comment keeps replaying in my head and it is really bothering me. Someone suggested I research the ring's history. I think I am going to see what I can find out. Update 1, you guys. I found out what Grandma Rose meant by compliance, and I am honestly sick to my stomach right now. After reading your comments on my last post, I decided to do some digging into Madison's family history, and this ring, what I discovered, is so much worse than I could have imagined. First, thank you to everyone who validated my sensory experiences. Several people suggested I might have sensory processing disorder or autism spectrum traits. And honestly, a lot of the resources you shared really resonated with me. I am looking into getting properly evaluated, but the immediate crisis is what I uncovered about the Carson family and their precious ring tradition. I started by asking Madison directly about her grandmother's compliance comment. She got defensive immediately. "Why are you obsessing over something an old woman said?" Grandma Rose gets confused sometimes. But here is the thing. Grandma Rose did not seem confused at all. She seemed very deliberate about that word choice. So I did what any reasonable person would do in 2025. I started investigating online. I found old newspaper articles, family documents, even some social media posts from Madison's cousins that painted a very disturbing picture. The Carson family ring is not just an engagement ring, it is a control mechanism. I found a blog post from Madison's cousin-in-law, Jessica, from 2018. Jessica had married Madison's cousin Derek and was writing about her experience with what she called the ring tradition. According to her post, men who marry into the Carson family are expected to wear the family ring at all times as a symbol of their commitment to putting family expectations above their own comfort or desires. It is presented as romantic tradition, but it is really about establishing who is in control from day one. Jessica went on to describe how her husband was pressured to wear the ring despite having a metal allergy. When he could not handle it, the family treated him like he was defective and uncommitted to the marriage. They literally told him that if he could not handle wearing a simple ring, how could he handle the responsibilities of being a Carson husband? But it gets worse. I found more posts from family members describing what happens after you are married into the Carson family. The ring is just the beginning. Madison's brother-in-law posted in a men's support group about how his wife's family expects him to check in with them before making any major decisions. Job changes, financial choices, even vacation plans. Everything has to be approved by the family council, which is led by Madison's father and grandmother. They say it is about family unity, he wrote, but it is really about control, and if you push back, they make you feel like you are being selfish and destroying family harmony. I started connecting dots. Madison's ex-boyfriend from college, the one she said could not handle commitment. I found him on social media. We had a very enlightening conversation. "Dude, run," was literally the first thing he said when I told him I was engaged to Madison. "That family is toxic. They tried to turn me into their puppet, and when I would not play along, they convinced Madison I was the problem." He told me about the ring, the constant family interference, and how Madison would side with her family against him every single time. She has been trained since childhood to prioritize family expectations over everything else, including her partner's well-being. This was 3 days ago. Since then, I have been watching Madison's behavior with completely different eyes. The way she dismisses my sensory issues is not just about the ring. It is about establishing that her family's expectations matter more than my physical and mental health. The way she involves her family in our personal conflicts is not just cultural. It is about having backup when I resist their control. The way she tests my tolerance for discomfort is not just insensitive. It is about conditioning me to accept that my needs do not matter. I feel like such an idiot for not seeing this pattern before. Last night, I confronted Madison about what I had learned. I showed her Jessica's blog post and asked her directly if the ring tradition is really about control rather than romance. She completely lost it. "How dare you go behind my back and contact my family members? You are being paranoid and dramatic," I said. "Madison, your cousin literally wrote about this being a control mechanism." She fired back. "Jessica was always jealous of our family traditions. She is bitter because she could not hack it as a Carson wife," I asked. Could not hack it? Or could not handle being controlled? That is when Madison said something that made my blood run cold. "Tyler, every marriage requires sacrifices. If you cannot sacrifice a little comfort for the good of the family, maybe you are not ready to be married. Not ready to be married to her. Ready to be married to the family." I asked her point blank, "If I wear this ring and marry you, what other sacrifices will be expected of me?" She could not give me a straight answer, just kept saying things like, "We will figure it out together and every family has expectations." I think I know what I need to do, but I am scared. This is not just about ending an engagement. It is about potentially exposing a pattern of manipulation that has affected multiple people. Several people are asking if I have talked to other Carson family-in-laws. I am working on it, but I think they are afraid to speak openly. Jessica reached out to me after Madison apparently called her screaming about the blog post. She wants to talk. I cannot believe I am saying this, but I think I need to document everything before I make my next move. Update 2: Madison's family held an intervention to force me to wear the ring, and what they revealed about their expectations for marriage is absolutely insane. I recorded everything. I cannot believe what just happened. I am sitting in my car outside a lawyer's office, and my hands are still shaking. After my last post, Jessica and I had a long phone conversation. She told me things about the Carson family that made me realize this situation is so much worse than I thought. "Tyler, the ring thing is just the tip of the iceberg," she said. "Once you are married, they expect complete financial transparency. They want input on where you work, where you live, how you spend money, even how often you visit your own family." She told me about her husband's experience. They made him quit a job because it required too much travel. Said a Carson husband's priority should be being available for family obligations. But here is the kicker. Jessica recorded some of these family meetings. Apparently, she started documenting things when she realized how controlling they were being. I have hours of audio of them discussing how to manage the men who marry into the family. "Tyler, they literally have strategies for breaking down independence." She offered to share some recordings with me, and what I heard made me sick. Madison's father and grandmother discussing how to train sons-in-law to prioritize family decisions over personal preferences. How to use guilt and emotional manipulation to ensure compliance. In one recording, I heard Madison's voice saying, "Tyler's sensory thing is actually perfect. If we can get him to ignore his own physical discomfort for the ring, he will be conditioned to ignore his own needs for bigger things later." They were using my disability as a training tool. I confronted Madison about this yesterday, showed up at her apartment with my laptop, and played her own voice back to her. She turned white, then red, then started screaming at me about violating family privacy and taking things out of context. "That was a private family discussion," she yelled. I said, "About manipulating me, Madison. You were literally talking about using my sensory issues to condition me into compliance," she said. "That is not what I meant. I was just trying to help you overcome your limitations," I replied, "by ignoring my neurological needs and treating them like character flaws." She started crying then, saying I was ruining everything and that I did not understand family loyalty, that her family only wanted what was best for everyone. Then she said something that made everything click. "Tyler, if you cannot trust us to make decisions for the good of the whole family, then maybe you are too selfish for marriage." I asked. "Make decisions for me," she said, "with you as a family unit." I pressed, "What if I disagree with those decisions?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Family consensus is more important than individual preferences." That is when I knew for sure that this was not a relationship. It was a recruitment process. I told her I needed time to think, and she immediately called her family. Within 2 hours, they had organized what they called an intervention to help me understand family values. I almost did not go, but Jessica convinced me to wear a wire and document everything. "If you do not expose this pattern, they will keep doing it to other people," she said. So I went. And fortunately, our state allows one-party consent recording, so I was able to legally document what happened. What occurred in that room was like something out of a cult documentary. Madison's entire extended family was there. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, about 15 people total. They had arranged chairs in a circle with one empty chair in the middle. For me, they literally staged an intervention because I would not wear an engagement ring. Madison's father started by saying they were concerned about my attitude toward family commitment. Her grandmother talked about how every generation has had to learn to put family before self. Then they brought out the ring, and Madison's uncle held it up like some kind of sacred object. "Tyler, this ring represents more than just marriage. It represents your willingness to be part of something bigger than yourself." I asked what exactly that meant, and that is when they spelled it out clearly. Wearing the ring despite discomfort shows you will prioritize family expectations over personal preferences. Once married, major decisions like job, finances, housing should be discussed with the family before being made. Individual therapy or counseling should be approved by the family to ensure it aligns with family values. Extended family events are mandatory regardless of personal schedules or comfort levels. Children's upbringing must follow family traditions and values. They presented this like it was totally normal, like every marriage works this way. Madison's grandmother looked me dead in the eye and said, "Young man, if you are not willing to surrender your individual needs for the good of the family, then you are not ready to be a Carson." I asked. "What if my individual needs include basic medical accommodations?" She said. "We do not believe in making exceptions for perceived limitations." Perceived limitations. They literally called my neurological differences perceived. That is when I knew I had to end this. Not just the engagement, the whole toxic dynamic. I stood up, took the ring, and said, "You are right. I am not ready to be a Carson. Because I will never be ready to surrender my autonomy, ignore my medical needs, or join a family that treats love like a cult recruitment process." The room exploded. Madison started crying and begging me to think about our future. Her father started yelling about disrespect and ingratitude. Her grandmother called me weak and selfish. But Madison's cousin, Emma, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up and said, "Good for you, Tyler. I wish I had had your courage." Then she walked out with me. Turns out Emma has been planning her own escape from the family dynamics for months. Her husband has been in individual therapy against family wishes, trying to recover from years of emotional manipulation. They broke him down systematically, she told me, made him believe his own judgment was flawed and that he needed family guidance for everything. It took 2 years of therapy for him to realize that was not normal. I am meeting with a lawyer today to make sure I understand my rights and to document everything in case this escalates. Jessica and Emma are both willing to provide testimony about the family's pattern of manipulation. Madison has been blowing up my phone with messages alternating between begging and threatening. Her latest text, "You will never find someone who loves you enough to accept your problems like I do." The manipulation is so clear now that I know what to look for. A lot of people asking if I am pressing charges. I am exploring options with the lawyer. Emma's husband wants to connect with other Carson family-in-laws who have been through this. Apparently there are several. Madison showed up at my work today. Security had to escort her out. Final update: the Carson family tried to destroy my career when I would not come back. But their psychological abuse of sons-in-law has just been exposed publicly, and the consequences are beautiful justice. 6 months later, and I need to give you all a final update because this story has an ending I never could have predicted. After I broke up with Madison and exposed their family manipulation tactics, I thought the worst was over. I was so wrong. The Carson family does not handle rejection well. Within a week of our confrontation, I started getting calls at work from people claiming to be former colleagues of mine, telling my boss about my unstable behavior and mental health issues. Madison's father apparently has connections in my industry and was systematically trying to damage my professional reputation. They filed false complaints with my professional licensing board, claiming I was mentally unfit for my job. They left fake reviews on my company's website describing me as erratic and unreliable. Madison kept showing up at my apartment, at my gym, at my favorite restaurants, always with the same message: this could all stop if you just come back and apologize to the family. It was textbook stalking and harassment. But here is where the story gets good. Remember Jessica and Emma, Madison's cousins who had also been documenting the family's manipulation. They were not the only ones. Turns out the Carson family's psychological abuse tactics had affected at least 8 different sons-in-law over the years, and several of them had been quietly documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to speak up. Jessica created a private Facebook group for Carson family victims and their supporters. Within days, we had detailed testimonials from multiple people describing identical patterns. Love bombing during engagement followed by systematic boundary violations, using physical or emotional vulnerabilities as training opportunities for compliance. Financial control and surveillance disguised as family unity. Isolation from outside support systems through mandatory family obligations. Gaslighting anyone who questioned family decisions or traditions. One man described being forced to quit therapy because the family decided his therapist was undermining family values. Another documented how they sabotaged his relationship with his own parents, to increase his dependence on Madison's family. The most heartbreaking story came from Madison's ex-brother-in-law, who had been married to her older sister for 5 years before escaping. He had recordings of family meetings where they discussed how to break down his resistance to their control. "They target men with vulnerabilities," he wrote. "Physical disabilities, anxiety, financial struggles, difficult family backgrounds. They see these as leverage points. That is when I realized why Madison was initially attracted to me. My sensory processing issues were not something she wanted to accommodate. They were something she wanted to exploit." Armed with all this documentation, we decided to go public. Jessica, who works in marketing, created a comprehensive website documenting the Carson family's pattern of psychological abuse. She called it the Carson Files and included anonymized testimonials, audio recordings, and detailed descriptions of their manipulation tactics. The website gained significant traction over several months as more victims came forward. Local news picked up the story as it gained momentum. "Prominent local family accused of systematic psychological abuse" was the headline in our city's main newspaper. Madison's father is a well-known real estate developer, and several of his business partners began gradually distancing themselves as the story spread. Her mother, who runs a high-end boutique, experienced declining business over the following months. But the real consequences came when other families started recognizing similar patterns in their own lives. 3 other prominent families in our area were exposed as having similar traditions of control and manipulation. One involved financial coercion, another used religious authority to justify abuse, and a third had been isolating daughters-in-law from their support systems for decades. The story caught the attention of psychologists and sociologists studying family systems and emotional abuse. Our documentation became part of a larger research project on coercive family systems and how they operate in seemingly normal, successful families. Madison tried to sue me for defamation, but her lawyer withdrew from the case after reviewing the evidence we had compiled. Hard to claim defamation when there are literally hours of audio recordings proving everything, though the legal proceedings are still ongoing. As for me personally, I got that official diagnosis for sensory processing disorder and autism spectrum traits. Working with an occupational therapist has been life-changing. I finally have strategies for managing sensory overload instead of just enduring it. I also started therapy to process the psychological manipulation I experienced. My therapist helped me understand that what the Carson family did was a form of gaslighting specifically targeting my neurological differences. They systematically trained you to doubt your own sensory experiences and accept pain as normal, she explained. That is not love. That is conditioning. The best part. I have been dating someone I met through the autism advocacy community. Sarah understands sensory issues from the inside, and our relationship is built on accommodation and mutual respect, instead of one person trying to fix the other. When I told her about the engagement ring situation, her response was, "Why would anyone expect you to hurt yourself to prove love? That is backwards." We have been together for 4 months, and I have never felt more accepted or understood. She has her own sensory challenges, so we naturally work together to create environments where we both feel comfortable. Last week, Sarah and I ran into Madison at a coffee shop. Madison looked exhausted and older. She asked how I was doing, and I told her I was well. "I heard about the website and everything," she said quietly. "I did not know other families had the same complaints," I asked. "Did you think your family was the only one using these tactics?" She was quiet for a long time. "Then, I grew up thinking that was just what families did. I did not know it was wrong." I felt sorry for her in that moment. She is as much a victim of her family's system as the men they targeted. The difference is, she was raised inside it and never learned to question it. "It is not too late to unlearn those patterns," I told her. She nodded, but did not say anything else. I heard through mutual friends that Madison has started individual therapy and has been distancing herself from her family's expectations. She broke up with the guy she was dating after me when he started asking questions about her family dynamics. Maybe she will break the cycle, maybe she will not, but that is not my responsibility anymore. The most important thing I learned through this whole experience is that accommodation is not the same as compromise. Someone who truly loves you will work with your limitations, not use them against you. I never have to wear an uncomfortable ring again. I never have to justify my sensory needs or prove my love through physical discomfort. I never have to surrender my autonomy to join someone else's toxic family system.